Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time you're watching this. My name's Connor from 905 Review. You're checking out our series Give This a Spin, where I recommend you guys some of my favorite albums. Today we're going to be looking at the lovely, the unique Kate Bush and her 1985 album, Hounds of Love. Kate Bush grew up in outer London as part of an artistic family, and you could say she was destined for success. A demo tape she made when she was 16 years old found its way to David Gilmour of Pink Floyd, who opted to help her out on her subsequent demo. This would be sent to the label EMI, who would end up signing her, and with them she would release 4 albums from 1978 through 1982, breaking all sorts of boundaries for female British artists. She has always strived to be independent, writing all her own songs, choreographing all her own live shows, and as of 1980, producing all her own songs. In doing so, her 1982 album The Dreaming would be a lot more artsy and outside of the box than her previous albums, which resulted in fewer overall sales, though higher critical praise. So which direction would she take her follow-up album, Hounds of Love? You're here to find out. It starts off with its lead single, Running Up That Hill. The song is led by a driving drum rhythm and a goofy sounding synthesizer. Kate Bush certainly has one of the most distinct voices out there, and with it, she sings about how if men and women could just trade places, we'd be able to understand each other so much better, and she's willing to strike a deal with God to be able to achieve that. It's you and me, and if only could, I'd make a deal with God, and I'd get him to swap. What a tune, eh? After this is another of the album's singles, and its title track. Kate just wants to be loved, but at the same time she's terrified of it, and she words this so beautifully. I love how she uses this big 80s massive drum sound to really play up that fear that she's feeling. Yet at the same time, the synthesizer progression is such a light-hearted one, as if to remind us that love is most often thought of as being this beautiful thing. Help me, someone, help me, please. Take my shoes off and throw them. Then we have the fourth of the album's 4 singles, The Big Sky. Kate reminisces about cloud gazing as a symbol of something you might have done as a kid without a care in the world before all these responsibilities you had as an adult. I'm looking at the big sky now. I'm looking at the big sky. You're looking at the big sky? We slow things down now with Mother Stands for Comfort. I love the production on this song. There's so many different aspects going on, yet with the pace of the song, it's not quite overwhelming. Just once your mind's caught on to one rhythm or a melody or a sound, there's already another one going off somewhere else, and they're just so beautifully placed throughout the sonic landscape of the song. The song is also, I believe, the first instance on this album of a semi-signature bass tone that Kate Bush uses around this time, and I just love the sound of it, and there's more of it to come. She knows that I've been doing something wrong. Lyrically, the song's about how your bond with your mother can be strong enough that she'd go through any length for you, even willing to help you cover up a murder. Thanks, Mom. Hot take. The best song on the first side of the album is the only one that's not a single. This one. Closing the first side of the album, we have its last single, Cloud Busting. The violins on this work tremendously, and the thick bass drum, as well as the quieter rattling drums during the chorus, pair very well with this. I just liked the song, man. I had no clue how deep this ran. There was an Austro-Hungarian psychoanalyst named Wilhelm Reich who was active throughout the first half of the 20th century. One of his biggest claims was his argon theory, that there was some sort of universal life source among all beings. He was of the belief that health defects could be caused by a lack of or disruption in your argon energy. And so he created argon energy accumulators, these insulated boxes that somehow harvested argon energy. He put some mice with cancer in one, and they got better, so he made people-sized ones. A decade later, he went further with this, believing that dry lands across the earth were caused by cosmic argon energy blocking out the ability for the atmosphere to create rain. He then invented cloudbusters, anti-air turret looking things that could supposedly cause rain. Needless to say, the FDA had him shut down and all his works destroyed, and that's cloud busting for you. The second side of the album is a kind of connected story where all the songs tie together and are known as the ninth wave, starting with its first part, And Dream of Sheep. In this, Kate's character is floating adrift at sea, hoping to be found before she grows too tired to keep going.
If they find me racing white horses, they'll not take me for a boy.
In the second act, Under Ice, she's skating freely on some ice, sees a figure roaming under it, and decides to follow it. She decides to follow it, and what do you know? It's her. She's watching herself trapped under the ice, drowning. She's pleading for help, but there's nobody around to help. I'm guessing this is purely done via synthesizer because nobody's credited on the track with playing a violin or a cello or an instrument of that sort. But there's these deep, dark strums, almost like reminiscent of the Jaws theme, to really induce that feeling of fear and pressure.
Everywhere, so wide. The river.
This is followed by Waking Witch, a slow piano ballad in which Bush hears all sorts of different voices in different contexts telling her to wake up as she has fallen unconscious.
Wake up, man.
Wake up, child. Pay attention. Come on. Wake up.
This is abruptly interrupted as the song changes drastically, and there's some very chopped up vocals of Kate's as if her drowning mind is struggling to put thoughts together. In this state, the song takes on a witch trial theme. There's church bells and devil voices and Latin phrases. Quite the change up.
Confess to me, roses go down.
The song's certainly wild and quite the change up, but it's not one I would really see myself listening to outside of the context of this album as a whole. This then leads to Watching You Without Me. A pretty deep and thought-provoking belief, but while Kate's character is drowning, her spirit is back at her home watching what life without her is like and how everybody there in that moment has no clue what's happening to her. I also like how a lot of the percussion in this portion sounds very hollow, as if it's representing, say, her body now that her spirit's gone, or her mind as that of a ghost.
You watch the clock move the slow hand. I should.
This leads to Jig of Life, where Kate is met with an older version of herself. The older version is telling her to keep fighting for her life because if she doesn't survive, then the older one couldn't possibly exist. And I love this part of the suite. It's up-tempo, it's rocking, and it's very traditional Irish folk sounding.
When you look into the future, never, never say goodbye to my part of your life. Oh, no, 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 no.
With the next part, Hello Earth, it's as if her soul has ascended from her body into something much more universal as her mind begins to die out. This is sung over a slow-paced, emotional, piano-based ballad, while the second half of it is much more ambient.
Traveling fast, just look at it go. Just look at it go.
And ending the story is the morning fog. Kate has been saved, her consciousness returns, and she has a brand new outlook on life.
Begin to bleed. Begin to breathe. Begin.
It's a happy and cheery conclusion, but the one quarrel I have with it is that the song, and therefore the album, feels like it just ends way too abruptly. Upon the album's 1985 release, it could also be found on limited edition brown or pink and gray vinyls. Maybe harder to find, there was a slightly different pink and white Canadian release of the album. However, this was discontinued because apparently it had very poor sound quality. Certain albums at this time also came tied in a magenta ribbon. 1997 reissues on CD also came with 6 additional tracks, remixes of The Big Sky and Running Up That Hill, as well as the 4 additional tracks Be Kind to My Mistakes, Under the Ivy,
Retreating to her favorite place.
Burning Bridge, and an interpolation of the old Irish folk song My Leg in Love.
And autumn leaves are falling.
In 2010, the album was released on 180-gram vinyl, again in pink and gray, to a limited number of copies. This was done again, only in purple, in 2014, but coolest of all, in 2021, for retailer HMV's 100th anniversary, for a select few historic albums, they put out only 1,500 copies, where each one was made from different recycled vinyls, meaning that each individual one was unique. The album was a hit in the UK, topped the charts, sits at double platinum, and is considered an all-time great in the eyes of many. It kept Kate's personality as seen on The Dreaming, while the singles maintained the catchiness of her earliest albums. This earned the album solid reviews all around. It's been published on some all-time best lists, including at 68th all-time by Rolling Stone, despite the fact they called it boring in their initial review. So Kate Bush, Hounds of Love. Gonna be brutally honest. My returning viewers might be aware that my mind doesn't generally pay too much attention to lyrics when I'm just casually listening to music in my free time. And with this album just being a hand-me-down from my parents, I didn't really consider it something I'd go out of my way to buy. So I was set to give this around a B grading. But really studying an album is a whole different story. It was already a pretty fun album, a very artistic one, which I don't mind at all. But then the lyrics and the storytelling were incredible. I mean, the whole second side being the story that is the Ninth Wave, I was blown away when I really paid attention to it, almost beyond words. Her portrayal of what the mind might go through as it's experiencing death is incredible. It's a topic I've been interested in for a long time, and I've theorized a lot about what could happen, and so to just hear her thoughts on it and the accompanying music, the whole second side of the album, as I said, I'm going to stamp this thing with an A grading. And I mean, It might be the single biggest turnaround I've had on a single listen of an album, at least of the ones I've studied throughout the history of this channel. And I was just floored by it. So those have been my thoughts on Kate Bush's Hounds of Love. Let me know your thoughts. Maybe stick around for another video, and I'll see you next time. But real quick before we take off, what were your thoughts on Hounds of Love by Kate Bush? You heard my thoughts. Let me hear yours. Did I rate it too high? Did I rate it too low? Was my turnaround of the album too drastic? Was it not drastic enough? Let me know your thoughts on the album, on the video, any suggestions you might have for future albums to review, and we'll see you next time. Take it easy.